David, I'm going to start with a tough one early doors. When I was doing some research about you, it's quite often that people in business get compared with people, but you get compared with more than one. And you were described as being a cross between Al Capone and Peter Stringfellow. Is that a fair assessment?
Not really. It's probably 20 years ago when that sort of thing was wrote. David Thames, lovely guy. I wouldn't have said Al Capone and probably wouldn't have said Peter Stringfellow. People who get to know me often say you're nothing like what is read or said about you. I think it's a blast from the past, the Al Capone. And Peter Stringfellow didn't touch the edges in regards to women compared to me.
What was your childhood like, David?
Well, I was very privileged. I had a great childhood. It was very hard. We were very poor, but you didn't know what you weren't getting. You don't miss what you've never had. And so virtually all the families on the street were skint, and they'd run out of money on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and you'd make do for the rest of the week borrowing or lending off each other. So it was a great environment, a lot of discipline and respect, and lots of families all involved with each other. So I wouldn't swap my childhood. It's probably helped make me who I am today. When
you're 15 years of age, your dad comes home on a Friday and says, David, I've got you a job starting Monday as a joiner. But presumably you were still at school at that stage.
Well, I was earning a lot of money by that stage. I was earning £78 a week. The joinery job he got me was £26 a week, so I didn't really want the job, but you didn't really negotiate with my dad. In them days in Rochdale, it was engineering, joinery, building. It was get a trade if you weren't going to be academic.
I'm very flattered to be asked to interview the two of you today, but I did say if I'm going to do it, I need to be able to ask David any questions at all. So I'm going to talk about a period of your life which is a bit colourful, to say the least.
Yeah, sorry, my wife's sat in the room. So.
Okay. So in terms of Farouche cuisine, you built up the sales force to 750, 34 branches. Some years later, you recruited Brian Kennedy, who you mentioned earlier. You sold it in 1986. You pocketed £12 million in the process as a 29-year-old. You went on a bit of a spending spree and partied hard. Tell us a bit about that part of your life.
To visualise it, I didn't really have a teenage or a 20s because I used to work till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Meet up with my mates at 11, 12 o'clock, wherever they'd be. And when you've got all that success and people telling you all the time how well it is and how amazing it is, and then you get a chunk of money, and you suddenly stop working, which was 7 days a week, right up to 29 years of age. You do go mad, and you do have a fantastic time. I really see why some people who make a lot of money early blow it all, because it's very easy to do. And what kept my balance was my wife, and I had 2 children by that stage.
Yeah.
So that keeps you grounded. But yeah, in between being grounded by my wife for 2 or 3 days, I'd have 4 or 5 crazy days in New York or Paris or wherever I went.
There's a couple of stories that I've heard about you as well. Tell me if they're true. But one was that you were doing, because we're going to talk to your son about his love of go-karting, and you were doing some racing. And the message and the moral of the story is don't jump in a car with David Russell. Don't know if you remember the story. Tell us about that.
It was a stag weekend, and we had Hired Raceway in Buxton. And in the middle, they built up a thing for the Sunday, which is in the figure of 8, a giant metal ramp that took you up to 5 cars stacked on top of each other. And there's a merchant banker called Jeremy Hand who's quite a successful guy in the city now, and he refused to drive in the cars all day. So I went around the track a couple of times with Jeremy, really nervous, and then at the last minute I switched into the figure 8, dropped it down second gear and shot up the ramp, and he was screaming and grabbing hold of me. And we landed on top of all these cars. But at the end of it, when he'd finished, he's just changed his life. I still see him.
We killed himself or something.
Jeremy really goes at his life now in a different way because he had such an adrenaline kick from doing that. So it's just, got to be done, and he loved it.
Thanks very much for that, David. We're going to come back to you again. We're going to go to Alex now. Alex, your parents split up when you were 18, but they still got on very well with each other. Growing up with a high-profile dad, were you Alex Russell or were you David Russell's son? How did people refer to you, and how did you look upon yourself?
First, my mum and dad did a great job of keeping the family together, particularly my mum. But yeah, growing up, I think in my peer group, my friends, I was always Alex Russell and still am, so that was never an issue. But whenever I was introduced to somebody in Manchester or locally in Cheshire, it was always, this is David Russell's son, Alex. what got me through that and the fun part of it was seeing their reaction on the face.
You went to university at Nottingham. You represented your country at go-karting. I don't know if the thrill for speed comes from your dad. Before moving to Italy to compete in the European Formula Renault Championship for a year, when you used to go for top speed of 175 miles an hour. At that stage, did you have that? Did you want to be a Formula One driver? Did you have ambitions to go down, the car route?
Not really. No, I think we got into it as a hobby. It was a great thing to do with my brother. We were away every weekend, me, my brother and my dad. I absolutely loved the racing. The downside of it was when you won and lost, you were on your own, because it's an individual sport. So once a year they did an event, the Five Nations, and when I was asked to captain England, it was definitely the highlight of my racing career, because you're racing with a group of lads that are all your mates and you're all going for the same result. And obviously the pleasure of beating Scotland and Wales as well is always fun.
Your interest in property, we go back to property, started very young. I think you used to go out with your dad every Sunday. Do you remember when your love of property started? And was it something that you just had in you, or did your dad encourage it?
Yeah, I think when he came back from his 4-year stag trip, I remember just taking a big interest in the property side of things. I think he touched on it before, the pride now of knowing that that's one of our buildings. If we weren't going back to Rochdale to be reminded where we came from, we were driving around Manchester or sites, in Oldham, Bury, Rochdale, and I took a strong interest then. And from a very early age, I remember certainly being a lot more into it than my brothers.
So, do you see yourself as a custodian of this business? Would you want to see your children follow in your footsteps, and would you treat them any differently to the way your dad's treated you?
I don't really see it being any different to how he's brought me up and brought me into the business eventually, in that I'll just give my kids every opportunity they've got to achieve in whatever they do. I'm really not bothered what they do. All I want is to maintain that work ethic. They work hard and enjoy life and have fun. Great, and I'll encourage them to do that. If that means that they're sat next to me in 20 years' time here, then great. But otherwise, I won't lose any sleep if they're not, as long as they're happy. Well,
I never thought I'd get the opportunity to interview David Russell. But put your hands together for Alex and David Russell.